Honestly, I'm fairly certain everyone and their mother have watched K-pop Demon Hunters by now, and if you haven't, what are you waiting for? It's a simple storyline with a ton of heart. The songs are banging. My girls are perfection. And they didn't force an happy ever after walk into the sunset romance, which for me is the icing on an already perfect cake. I've seen people upset about how things with Jinu panned out, and it just has me sitting with the fact that for those who are so focused on the romance, they totally missed out on the central messaging of the film. That our fears make us, cage us, and free us in equal measure, that our shame burden us while simultaneously propelling us. Jinu is a device to have Rumi, the girls, and by extension, we, the audience, realize that. It's just He's a pretty face and has a ton of chemistry with her, so I can see why some folks got sidetracked. But even with that, we cannot afford to lose sight of what the film actually has to teach us about fear and shame. Because it would be a real shame to focus excessively on a missed romance and ignore that bit. Or don't you think so? Now, before we talk about the film, I have a confession. I don't think I've mentioned it as often or recently on the channel, maybe in my way earlier videos, but your girl has been a K-pop fan since like 2009, 2010. It started with a love for K-dramas back in 2007, and because I loved the soundtrack of the shows and when searching for the ones I really, really liked, it led me directly into one of my absolute favorite genres of music. The reason why I think it's important for me to bring up is because I feel the need to admit my inherent bias. I love K-pop, and K-pop Monster Hunters is a direct love letter to K-pop and its fans. So maybe that bias is what's coloring my absolute love for this film. Because personally, I think it's one of the best films, animated or otherwise, that has been released this year so far. And this year has had quite a number of bangers. So before I promise you gold, especially for those who haven't watched the film yet and are undecided about it, maybe check out other reviews from non-K-pop fans to see what they are saying about it. Because I personally think it's very lovely. And for those who do enjoy K-pop and are curious about my favorite groups, I am a VIP for life. Fuck Sungri though. But yeah, miles above everybody else and my absolute favorite, Big Bang. Favorite Big Bang song? Haru Haru. Second favorite group, Spiker. Favorite Spiker song. Third favorite group, VIX. Favorite VIX song, Era. And finally, Mamamoo. Favorite Mamamoo song, Egotistic. I know, the only truly happy one in the list. And for those who are curious, my 3 favorite songs in the K-pop Monster Hunters soundtrack are Golden, What It Sounds Like, and Free. And with that said, let's talk about the film. And as always, we'll start with a quick summary. K-pop Monster Hunters follows the trio of Rumi, Mira, and Zoe, who make up the global K-pop girl group named Huntrix. Their songs are mega hits the whole world over, and they are the undisputed leaders of the chart. This is of course important because Huntrix, whilst K-pop stars on the surface, have a more important duty. They belong to a legacy of demon hunters, singers who have used their music to create a barrier known as Unmun, which repels the demons and keeps them from crossing over to the mortal plane to steal humans and their souls to send back to the demon lord Guima to feed on. For centuries, each generation of singer/demon hunter has passed this on to the next group until we finally made it to Huntrix, who have been tasked with finally turning the Unmoon from silver to gold. A significant task because once the Unmoon turns golden, all demons will be expelled from the world and would never be able to cross over to the human plane. And they are so close. But that's the situation that displeases Guima because he's been starving for centuries thanks to those meddling demon hunters, and now they're about to finish their work. Which is where Jinwoo, a demon in the demon realm, comes in. Jinwoo suggests to Guima that there's a better way to handle the matter with Huntrix, which is to steal the souls they are protecting with music of their own. Jinwoo, as a musician from 400 years prior, is thus made the head of the Saja boys, and they make their way into the human world. A very worrying state of affairs, especially because Rumi, head vocalist of Untrix, is losing her voice. And the reason for that being that Rumi has patterns. A demon's patterns, as she is the child of a demon and her hunter, effectively making her half demon, which in turn is her source of shame. Now, I'm not going to go into details because for those who haven't watched the film yet, I don't want to spoil the movie for them. It's only been out for a couple of weeks, so I know not everyone watching this video might have seen it yet. But what then follows is a battle for the souls of humans using music, and I just really love this film. I also love the fact that, like Sinners, it recognizes how music really is a medium that is powerful enough to capture souls and keep us enraptured. It can either save us or damn us, and that is very powerful messaging. Am I the only one who finds it a lovely bit of coincidence that two amazing films released this year both have music at the core of their storytelling? But back to the title of this video. Central to the messaging for K-pop Monster Hunters is not Rumi and Jinu's romance, contrary to what so many people think. Instead, it's always been about the girls and Jinu's shame and fears. For Rumi, it's because she's half human, half demon, and the shame of that weighs her down, has her hiding away from the others, but most especially away from her friends, her bandmates. She lives in a constant state of fear about what they would think of her, what they would say if they realize that she's so similar to the same beings that they've been hunting ever since they picked up microphones alongside their weapons. And of course, this fear and shame in her is bred by Celine, their mentor, who kept drumming it into Rumi that her friends would never understand her and would loathe her, projecting her own thoughts about Rumi's patterns and dual heritage onto the younger girls. And do I have not so charitable thoughts about Celine? Yes, I do. Will I make a video about her? Oh, most certainly. But back to Rumi and her shame, I found it a very conscious choice and decision of the movie that of all the characters that had things they were ashamed of, Rumi is the one most burdened with a shame that isn't hers to bear, and the subsequent fears weren't hers to carry either. It wasn't her fault that her parents fell in love. It wasn't her fault that her mother, who was a demon hunter, fell for a demon and had a child for him. It wasn't her fault that they forced onto her a dual heritage that she never asked for and was simply born with. And yet this young girl, upon whom was placed the burden of saving the world, was also turned into someone who felt shame while she did so for something that was absolutely not her fault. And I don't know about you, but to me, it felt like the movie was directly talking to us, asking us a very important question to check within and find out if truly the shame we've hidden away that drives a lot of our interactions, that has us hiding from those who would love us unconditionally, this shame that makes us believe that something about us, about who we are, is broken and unworthy of their love and care, if that shame is truly born as a result of something we did, or if it is us picking up other people's mistakes and hurts to us and inheriting their shame as our own. Mira's shame is also tied to others, whereas Rumi's shame was tied to her family origin and how she's conceived, literally nothing she had a hand in. Mira's shame, whilst also tied to her family, instead speaks to a shame that manifests based on what our families say of us and to us. How they lash out based off of us not living up to their perceived expectations of what we should be, our inability to be the perfection that they seek to mold and shape in the way they deem fit. Mira is written off as a problem child, someone who causes trouble wherever she goes and is thus unworthy of love and care. And we see this affirmed because that's the words her doubts and fears take when they whisper into her ear to get her to go to the Saja Boys concert. Mira is the shame that others put onto us when they can't fit us into neat, tidy boxes, when we refuse to just behave, to act right, to not cause trouble. What should have been interpreted as Mira's desire to take up space in the world was written off as her being a problem child, always acting up, and we see the scars of that go deep. It's what becomes the fear that drives her, a worry that ultimately her friends would believe that she's more trouble than she's worth. Zoe's shame is so aligned and similar to Mira's because hers takes the tinge of the fear of being too much. Where Mira acts out her desire to take up space by becoming what others would write off as a problem child, Zoe instead goes inwards. Hers expresses as becoming a people pleaser, driven by the desire to not be seen as too much, to be as accommodating as possible to what everyone wants and demands of her. Mira becomes bigger, Zoe becomes smaller, and Rumi would rather just disappear and not be present. They do all of this to hide their shame. Our family, society, the criticisms we have to live with try to convince us that they hold power over us, and they do. As long as we keep that shame tightly concealed and those fears which hold us back. K-pop Monster Hunters as a film is one that clearly wants us to realize that the best way to deal with shame is to not hide. It's to put it on blast for everyone to see, because the only ones that give our shame power is ourselves. The darkness feeds it, makes it bigger than what we can ever dream of, and we become so desperate to keep this shame hidden that we do any and everything to hide it away, completely unaware that it isn't even our shame to bear in the first place. Matter of fact, the things about us that we were taught to fear, to hate, to hide away are the very things that empower us. Mira being a problem child is what makes her become the larger-than-life entity that becomes a core third of Untrix. Zoe's too muchness is what comes to play when they have to work, and is also how she serves as a mediator and a backbone for her friends and her group. And Rumi's half-demon, half-human heritage is what helps her see that being a being of emotions is her own power, is something that is as part of her as her voice, which is why it is when she starts to make peace with it that her voice heals. Hell, even Jinu's shame is one that is brought on by the fact that their society put him in a terrible position where it was either he starved with his family or he alone got to eat and enjoy the luxury of playing for the king and the nobles. Why is he the only one bearing the shame of that decision and not the king, who saw his subjects' family suffering and starving and instead decided to do nothing? Like, I'm not saying that Jinwoo choosing to abandon his family wasn't a terrible thing. And I mean, he became a demon haunted by those voices for 400 years. So clearly he knows that it was a terrible decision. But it doesn't mean that that shame is his to bear alone. It isn't. But we can say it is because of the shame of his action that he tries to make things right at the end of the film. Shame serves as a way to direct us, to let us know the instances where we failed others or where we have been failed in turn, and it is important to be able to tell the difference. But ultimately, shame and the fears it brings are a very important part of our very human experience. We can't just let it go, which is why K-pop Demon Hunters makes that very conscious decision to end the way it did. The honeymoon still exists, but it isn't golden, and the girls aren't pushing to make it golden. Because the golden honeymoon had become a symbol of the girls, specifically Rumi, trying to hide her shame. But now it's out and she wears it proudly and continues to live her life regardless. She doesn't need that golden honeymoon. She can make her own honeymoon, and she does, alongside her friends. And I don't know about you, but that made me very emotional. It really is an amazing story, and I'm not gonna lie at all. I cried whilst watching this film. Of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Have you watched K-pop Monster Hunters yet? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Please drop your responses in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share this if you want. Support me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.